Hey, everybody, we are live. We're live. We're about a minute late. Sorry about that. Just had some technical difficulties with my green screen. I was trying to work it out so that I don't glow in the back and things don't show up and craziness. But anyway, tonight we have three main topics tonight. Those topics are our fantasy draft is coming up on Sunday at 6 Eastern, which means if you want to join, find the link on our channel on YouTube under the tab community. So please sign up. We have 4 teams right now. We're looking for, more. We can have up to 12, I think. So the more the better. However, the smaller, the easier it is to pick because we'll have really good teams. There'll be a lot of good available players. So small is not necessarily a bad thing in this league. But we're going to be talking about 2 things tonight. In addition to the fantasy football league, and that is the standings in Major League Baseball right now. Let's get right to that. As you can see up on the screen, hopefully you can see it. The Yankees and Orioles are basically in a dead heat. There's a half-point difference. The Yankees are ahead because they have one less loss than Baltimore. Baltimore's obviously played one more game and lost that game, and they're a half game out. And the Red Sox, they're on the third line, are somewhat of contenders in the wild card. However, they're not in the top 3 as of right now. So you're really looking at a dead heat between the Yankees and the Orioles. And then there's an outside chance if Boston gets hot. Hello, Christina. If Boston gets hot, that they might make the wild card, but it will be between these 2 teams. Yeah, Boston's 7.5 games back. So they got a lot to climb, and they would have to climb over the Orioles. All right, so in the American League Central, we have 3 really quality teams right now. We have the Guardians, who are in first place. We have the Twins and the Royals. And let's see here. The Twins and Royals are within 2.5 behind the Guardians. So it is a little bit of a dead heat here too, or a crapshoot, whatever you want to call it. I mean, there's no guarantee that the Guardians are going to win the division. I mean, they're only up by 2.5 games in front of 2 teams, and not just one team that's chasing them closely. It's 2 teams. However, if you look at it in the East, as I've said for many weeks here, why isn't this thing coming down here? Hold on. Okay. We have the Yankees and the Orioles in the East. And then in the Central, we have Cleveland, Minnesota, Kansas City. And they're all within 2.5. Minnesota and Kansas City tied 2.5 back. And as we talked about the other night, Chicago White Sox are already mathematically eliminated. The Houston Astros have taken a gigantic lead here in the West. They're up by 5 games over Seattle, and they've also been playing very well. They're 9-1 over their last 10, as opposed to the Mariners, who are, what was it, just 3-7 or 4-6 rather. So it looks like right now, I don't know why all this stuff happens to me right when I'm talking to all of you, but it looks like the Yankees, Baltimore, Cleveland's leading. Then you have Kansas City and you have Minnesota coming on. I'm just making it a little bit bigger so I can go back to it. Of course, everything starts acting up as soon as I get on here. All right. So we have Cleveland, Minnesota, Kansas City. Then we have Houston. No one else really from the AL West. The Seattle Mariners have an outside chance at a wild card. We go to the National League East, where Philadelphia is running away with it. They're up by 7 games over Atlanta. So you can pretty much pencil in Philadelphia. Atlanta has a good chance of making the wild card. Then you have Milwaukee just running away with it in the Central over my St. Louis Cardinals by 11 games. They're up tonight even. Milwaukee is, I think, 3-0 or something like that. So it looks like they're even going to have a greater gap between them and the Cardinals. And it looks like Cincinnati and Chicago are right on the Cardinals' heels. So there's no guarantee after tonight that even the Cardinals will be in second place there in the NL Central. And in the West, it's really a 3-team race. It's LA, San Diego, and Arizona. Now, if we look at wild card, if I can get to that, we look at wild card. We talk about Baltimore, either the Yankees or Baltimore making it. Then it's Minnesota, Kansas City. Those are the top three: Baltimore, Minnesota, Kansas City, and Boston is 4.5 games back of them, which essentially means that right now it's a 3-team race and there's 3 spots. So unless Boston charges and either Kansas City or Minnesota or Baltimore really plunge over the last part of the season, it looks like those 3 teams will get in. Now the National League it's more wide open. San Diego, Arizona are leading in the wild card, and then Atlanta in the East is back there. But then you have New York Mets only a game and a half back. They could, overtake Atlanta. They could charge up and be ahead of Arizona. The other thing, your dad's friend has a dog collar signed by Michael Vick. That is a very unusual thing to have signed by Michael Vick, but not crazy. The other thing to think about in the where was it? The Central? I know. In the NL West could have all 3 wild card teams. And let me just back this out for you. San Diego, Arizona could be 2 of the 3 wild cards. And if Atlanta and New York, let's say they beat each other up and they eliminate each other, San Francisco then could be the 3rd NL West team that makes the playoffs. All right. That is an interesting story, TCG hobby. I appreciate it. That is a very interesting thing to have signed by one Michael Vick, who, as I'm guessing most of you know, ran into some legal issues because he put together some dog fighting competitions, fights, if you will. So very interesting. All right. Before I forget, please hit that like and subscribe button. Also, we are having our fantasy draft this Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern. It'll be streamed where I'll be talking, and then people can pick in the chat when it's their turn. But if you want to be part of the Sideline Fans Fantasy Football League, go to the Sideline Fans YouTube page and then scroll over. It says videos, shorts, live, and then over to the right of those buttons is one that says community. If you go there under community, the second message will be a message that gives you the link on how to stream, or not how to stream, how to sign up for fantasy. Sorry about that. I was thinking of 2 things at once as I was pressing a button here. So, okay. So that's really where we're at right now. We're going to be talking about top 10 fantasy football quarterbacks in my mind as we get ready for the Sideline Fans Fantasy Football Draft. And as you get ready for your fantasy football drafts, we wanted to do this. So what I'll be taking you through is the top 10 fantasy quarterbacks for 2024. All right. Let's go through these now. I'm going to go a little bit backwards. We're going to start with maybe the sleepers or the quarterbacks who are just outside my top 10. We're going to start there, and then we're going to go to 10 and 9 and 8, and then work our way down to number 1. And I'm sure most of you can probably predict the 2 or 3 or 4 names that are the last 3 or 4 names on this list. But let's start with the ones that are just outside my top 10. Outside the top 10 is Kirk Cousins, who now is with Atlanta, and he has a strong group of offensive players. He has Kyle Pitts, the tight end. He has a wide receiver who's going to have a great year, Drake. I cannot read my writing here. And then his running back is Bijan Robinson. So he's going to have a great skilled player group that he can throw to. And they can run the ball. And if they get that running game going, it opens up the passing game and vice versa. And then I think Trevor Lawrence, who may not have had the most touchdowns last year, he did battle injuries. He had 21 touchdowns, but he did have 14 interceptions, which is not a great ratio, touchdowns to interceptions, but he has had much fewer in the past seasons. Again, he was battling injuries. So I look for him to have a good season next year and kind of jump out of that. So let's go to the next slide here. And number 10 is Tua with the Miami Dolphins. Now, last year he threw for 4,600 yards. He had 29 touchdowns. He ran for 74 yards and had 0 touchdowns rushing. But he has Tyreek Hill to throw to and Jaylen Waddle. So he has a core of folks that can catch the ball and score touchdowns and pick up great yardage. So the key to the Miami Dolphins offense outside of Tua will be Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle being healthy, being able to run, getting open, yards after the pass or yards after completion. I think it's Yak now, right? The Yak yards. So every 5 years they kind of change the name of that. So, all right. Now, next at number 9, we have with the Green Bay Packers, Jordan Love, who passed for 4,100 yards, 32 touchdowns, and ran for 4 more. Next year, by mid-season or at the end of the year, I really think Jordan Love will be a top 5 or potentially arguably a top 5 quarterback. He'll have those kinds of numbers. He's shown it last year. He has a great arm and he's extraordinarily mobile. He's still very young. He hasn't, received a lot of injuries, so he's going to be gangbusters. He could move up from 9 to 5 next year, at least probably from 9 to 7, 9 to 6 in my ratings, if you will, or my rankings. So he will have one heck of a great year, I think, and quickly become maybe not next year, but the year after that, probably, again, barring injuries, knock on wood, he'll be a top 5 quarterback, if not even a top 4 in 2 to 3 years. Right. Number 8, Justin Herbert. Sorry. I get confused on that because growing up, there was a quarterback had the same spelling last name, but we called him Bear, the French pronunciation of it. So every time I see that name, I want to say Justin Bear, but that's not the case. So, but Justin had 3,100 yards. Now he was injured. He had a broken index finger. He missed the last 4 weeks of the season. He could put up some really big numbers next year, especially because of the injury. Like if he stays healthy, and an index finger isn't that big of a deal. It is if you're throwing and it's broken, but once it heals, it's a pretty good sign. It's not the worst thing ever. And he obviously has healed. And so I expect those numbers to jump up quite a bit from the year before. Now at number 7, we have Number 7, we have CJ Stroud, who's very fun to watch. Another player, I think, that if not next year, in 2 years could be a top 5 quarterback. Last year, he had 4,100 yards passing, 23 touchdowns, 167 yards rushing, and 3 touchdowns with his feet. The Texans, that is, picked up from Buffalo, Stefon Diggs. Stefon Diggs as a wide receiver is going to help CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud's probably going to have bigger numbers next year because of someone like Stefon Diggs. So with Stefon Diggs helping the passing game, it's going to open up the run game. It's going to really open up their offense a lot. They're getting a top quality, a number 1 type receiver for him to throw to. And that's going to help their offense tremendously this season. All right, at number 6, sort of a fixture now, Lamar Jackson, one of the best for a long time. He had 3,600 yards passing, 24 touchdowns, 821 yards rushing, and 5 touchdowns with his feet. Now, here's the thing: if he can stay away from injuries, if he can be healthy, if he can play 16 games, 17 games, they might leave him out if they made the playoffs. He's going to have one heck of a great year. But if you look at some of his statistics over the last, 4 years, he's played 12 games a couple times. And so that makes the light bulb go off and say, okay, he's rushing the ball. Is he opening himself up to get injured? One of his biggest weapons are his feet. Or his biggest weapon, are his feet, because you don't know if he's going to pass. You don't know if he's going to run. It's hard to scheme against someone like that. We saw that years ago with Michael Vick, who one of the chatters talked about earlier tonight in some dog tag or something they had autographed. But Lamar Jackson, if he can remain, hey, Nathaniel's here. If Lamar Jackson can stay healthy, he's going to have, you're probably looking at 36 to 4,000 yards passing. You're probably looking at 30 yards or 30 touchdowns passing, probably within 800 yards rushing into 5 touchdowns. Nathaniel says he likes the Dodger hat. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. At number 5, we have Dak Prescott. Now, Dak Prescott is sort of the antithesis. He's the opposite of Lamar Jackson. He's a pocket passer. He doesn't run very much. He did have 2 touchdowns and 242 yards running last year, but he had 4,500 yards in the air and 36 touchdowns. So he is really strong at throwing the ball. I will say, as long as, again, he's a little injury prone. And the reason why I say this is because in 2020, he played in only 5 games. And in 2022, he only played in 12 games. So as long as he can stay healthy, last year going into the playoffs, all the big money was on Dallas to make a run for the Super Bowl, led by Prescott. And I think their kicker, who's crazy good too, but more so Dak, obviously. I mean, 4,500 yards passing, that is the biggest number. Let me just double check that real quick. That is the big. Tua had 4,600. So I take that back. It's the second most on my list of 10. So 4,500 yards passing is what Dak had last year, and 36 touchdowns passing. So big numbers. Look for Dallas to make a deep run next year like they did. As long as Dak doesn't get injured, they're going to have the same type of year, and hopefully for Dallas fans with more success than they did in the playoffs. And I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm saying I used to be a Cowboys fan 40 years ago, and before they got really good in the early 90s there, and it's a fun town when the football team is playing very well. It's a fun team. All right, number 4 is Joe Burrow. Now, Joe was injured last year. He had a ligament tear, and after that, he didn't play in any more games. He only had 2,300 yards passing, 15 touchdowns. He ran 88 yards and had 0 touchdowns, but really look for him to rebound this year. He's healthy. He knows what to do. He's been to a Super Bowl. He's a championship type quarterback. He's in my top 4, which means he is an elite quarterback that you can draft safely in any fantasy pick. Now, I will say Dak and Lamar, if it gets to them, you can pick them up safely too. Dak and Lamar, quality quarterbacks. They're going to put up really good numbers along with Joe Burrow now that he's healthy. He will be a star player this year. Yeah. Oh, thank you on Prescott. Thank you. All right. Number 3, probably not going to start surprising you. You figure who I haven't said. Jaylen Herz, I have number 3. Now, Jaylen runs a little bit more. He had over 600 yards rushing. He had 15 rushing touchdowns. So he uses his legs a lot differently than Lamar Jackson does. He still runs a lot more. Okay. 15 rushing touchdowns tells me that he runs a lot. Okay. And he runs in the red zone and he runs when there's high pressure situations. He had 3,800 yards passing and 23 touchdowns in the air, but he had 15 rushing. So of the 38 touchdowns, a little 40% came from his feet. Now, if you listen to everything I've said about this with quarterbacks, the importance or the key to Philadelphia having a long playoff run or doing extraordinarily well during the regular season is, of course, Jaylen Herz remains healthy. Now, I know that they lost the Kelsey center, Travis's brother, Jason. They lost him, but they seem to be in good shape. From the center position, the offensive line has been solid and steady over the last several years. So my guess is Jaylen Herz will stay fairly healthy, but a player that runs that much, in the back of your head, you always got to be thinking, what happens if he gets hurt? All right. We have two more to go through. If you like what you're watching, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Don't forget, we have a fantasy football draft coming up on Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern. We're going to live stream that. You can join. The information for that live stream is on the Sideline Fans YouTube page under the community tab. So it says videos, shorts, live. And if you keep scrolling to the right, it says community. And in there, the second post will have the link to sign up for the fantasy football team. All right. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button now. All right. So number 2, I know what you're thinking. Is it Patrick Mahomes or is it Josh Allen? Well, I'll tell you, it's Patrick Mahomes. And he's just an intangible type of player. He only had 27 touchdowns in the air, but he had 4,100 yards passing. He had 389 yards rushing and 0 touchdowns. So maybe not the balance that we've seen before between his feet and his arm, maybe not as many touchdowns as we've seen in years past, but it's a different kind of offense. It's a different kind of offense. It's creative. Patrick Mahomes is the intangible player. You don't know what he's going to do. He had the behind the back pass over the weekend to Travis Kelce in the preseason game. He's extraordinarily athletic. He has sort of free range to do what he wants to do, or free reign rather, to do what he wants to do in the offense, audible, all of those kinds of things. A lot of confidence. The team has a lot of confidence behind him. So the reason why I have him number 2 is because of his stats from last year. My worry is that he has a season that's about the same. I mean, think about it. He had a season. Oh, thank you, Nathaniel. He had a season that won a Super Bowl, and he passed for 4,100 yards and had 27 touchdowns. What else does he really need to do? He won a Super Bowl with that formula. I think those numbers, I think the touchdowns are going to go up next year. I think he's more comfortable with his receivers. He had lost Tyreek and things like that. So I don't think he was as sure about his receivers, but I think now he will be. And I think he'll be reliable and put up some bigger numbers, just as Nathaniel put into the chat there. Yeah, he needs to find his interconnection with his receivers. I completely agree, Nathaniel. And finally, at number 1, talk about steady. It's Josh Allen. I mean, there's no secret as to, 2 of my favorite quarterbacks to watch. It's Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. And I'm more of a Chiefs fan now. 2 years ago, I was more of a Buffalo Bills fan, but this past season, since I live in St. Louis and we don't have a team, I've gone back to the Kansas City Chiefs because they were just so much fun to watch in the playoffs. He's solid. He's steady. 4,300 yards passing, 29 touchdowns. He had 15 rushing touchdowns. So he puts up some big numbers on his feet. He had 524 yards rushing, which is sort of unheard of when you have 29 touchdowns in the air. Jaylen Herz had 23 passing touchdowns and 15 rushing touchdowns. Josh Allen has 29 touchdowns in the air and 15 rushing touchdowns. So a big difference there, 6 touchdowns. And I just think that right now, again, with football, I always think this, and I know I'm kind of being redundant and saying the same thing, but if Josh Allen can stay healthy, there's no reason he's not going to have 4 to 4,500 yards passing, or he's not going to have 27 to 33 yard or touchdowns in the air. There's no reason he's not going to have 400 to 600 rushing yards and 10 to 15 rushing touchdowns. It's going to be the same type of offense. That's what they built in Buffalo, and they built it all around him. And he's successful in that system, and he's proven that he's successful in that system. The only thing I'll say is he probably needs to and wants to and has lost sleep over not beating the Chiefs, but they're close. And I know that, you got to figure Josh Allen he's as competitive as Patrick Mahomes. Maybe he doesn't have the creative ability or some of the intangibles Patrick has, but he's just as talented. So, all right. Yes. I'm just looking at the chat real quick. All right. Nathaniel can only hear us he's at a Yankees game. So I'll put the banner back up. So that's it, guys, for the stream tonight. And I really want to thank you for watching. The quarterbacks, as I said, are for fantasy. It's my top 10, and I gave you 2 that were sort of outside of the top 10. So if you're looking for quality quarterbacks, if you have 1 or 2 of these guys in that list, you're going to do pretty good this year. Hopefully better than I can think. Hopefully they're all number 2 or 3 kind of quarterbacks, or the ones that you pick up are in the top 1 or 2, so that would be a great season for you. So we will be back on Thursday. If you like what you see, if you aren't a subscriber, please like and subscribe. If you want to join our fantasy football league, please do so. The information is on our Sideline Fans YouTube page under the community tab. And otherwise, we'll talk to you again on Thursday at 8 o'clock Eastern. Thanks a lot for joining us. Take care.